The maid was called to serve at her boss's wedding, but he proposed to her in front of everyone. The crash of breaking dishes echoed through the kitchen of the Hawthorne mansion, followed by a muffled scream. Olivia Pearson, 28, quickly knelt down to pick up the shards, her heart racing. It wasn't the first time her mind had wandered, distracting her from her tasks, but never before had it resulted in such a noisy disaster. "Mrs. Pearson, is everything all right in there?" Mr. Alexander Hawthorne's deep, worried voice echoed from the corridor. Olivia closed her eyes for a moment, trying to pull herself together. "Yes, Mr. Hawthorne. Just a little accident. I'm already cleaning up." Footsteps approached, and, within seconds, the imposing figure of Alexander Hawthorne, 35, owner of the mansion and her employer for the last 3 years, appeared in the kitchen doorway. His piercing blue eyes surveyed the scene, Olivia kneeling on the floor, surrounded by shards of fine china. "Leave it, Olivia. You could hurt yourself," he said, his voice softer than usual. He came closer, crouching down beside her. "What happened?" Olivia felt the heat rise to her cheeks. Alexander's proximity always made her nervous, but she tried to keep her composure. "I got distracted for a moment, sir. I'm sorry about the damage." Alexander shook his head, a slight smile appearing on his lips. "They're just plates, Olivia. Your safety is more important." He gently took the cloth from her hands, their fingers brushing briefly. "Go and get some rest. I'll take care of it." Olivia blinked, surprised. "But sir, it's my job." "Consider it a direct order, then," he said, his tone firm but not rude. "Besides, there's something I need to discuss with you. Meet me in the library in 10 minutes, please." With that, he began to clean up the mess, leaving Olivia stunned. In 3 years working at the Hawthorne mansion, she had never seen her boss perform any household chores. Even more intriguing was the request to meet him in the library. What could be so important? Olivia stood up, straightening her discreet uniform. Her reflection in the window glass showed a young woman of medium height, brown hair tied up in a simple bun, and hazel eyes that always seemed to contain a mixture of determination and unfulfilled dreams. 10 minutes later, she knocked softly on the library door. "Come in." Alexander's voice sounded from inside. Olivia opened the door to find her employer sitting behind an imposing mahogany desk. The library was one of the most impressive rooms in the mansion, with floor-to-ceiling bookcases filled with books, a stone fireplace and large windows looking out onto the manicured gardens. "Sit down, please." Alexander gestured to a chair in front of the desk. Olivia obeyed, her hands restlessly in her lap. "Mr. Hawthorne, I'm really sorry about the incident in the kitchen. I promise it won't happen again." Alexander held up a hand, interrupting her. "That's not what I want to talk about, Olivia. In fact, I have a rather unusual request for you." He paused, seeming to choose his next words carefully. Olivia noticed a tension in his shoulders that was unusual for the always composed Mr. Hawthorne. "As you know, my wedding to Miss Vanessa Sinclair is scheduled for a month from now," he began. Olivia nodded, ignoring the pang she felt in her chest. The announcement of Alexander's engagement to the beautiful and wealthy heiress Vanessa Sinclair had been the gossip of the year in Cedar Grove, the small Maine town where the Hawthorne mansion was located. "What you may not know is that we're struggling to find a suitable housekeeper to oversee the final preparations and ensure that everything runs smoothly on the day of the event," Alexander continued. "Vanessa is demanding, and none of the candidates seem to meet her expectations." Olivia frowned, confused. "I'm sorry to hear that, sir, but I don't understand how I can help." Alexander leaned forward, his eyes fixed on hers. "Olivia, over the last 3 years, you have proven yourself to be not only an extremely competent employee, but also someone I can trust implicitly. Your discretion and dedication are second to none." He paused again, as if gathering his courage. "What I want to ask is that you take on the role of housekeeper for the wedding. I know it's beyond your normal remit, but I'm willing to offer generous additional compensation." Olivia felt as if the air had been sucked out of the room. Her housekeeper for the wedding. The idea of overseeing the wedding preparations of the man she secretly had feelings for seemed like a cruel irony of fate. I don't know what to say, Mr. Hawthorne," she stammered. "It's an honor that you trust me with something so important, but I have no experience with events of this size." Alexander smiled gently. "You have all the necessary skills, Olivia. Organization, attention to detail, diplomacy, and, most importantly, you know this house and its staff better than anyone." He stood up, walking over to the window. "Besides, I confess I'd feel more at ease knowing you were in charge. Your presence has always had a calming effect on me." Olivia felt her heart race at these words. She knew she should refuse. The idea of being so intimately involved in Alexander's marriage to another woman was too painful. But at the same time, how could she deny such a sincere request from her employer? She began, still uncertain. Just then, the library door opened abruptly. Vanessa Sinclair walked in, her presence immediately dominating the room. Tall, blonde, and impeccably dressed, she was the embodiment of high society sophistication. "Alex, darling, you won't believe what happened to the flowers we ordered for—" Vanessa stopped when she saw Olivia. Her beaming smile gave way to an expression of mild displeasure. "Oh, I didn't know you were busy." Alexander turned around, his posture changing subtly. "Vanessa, what a surprise. I didn't expect you today." "Clearly," Vanessa replied, her eyes going from Alexander to Olivia. "Did I miss something important?" "Actually," Alexander said, his voice firm, "I'm asking Miss Pearson to take on the role of governess for our wedding." Vanessa's eyes widened for a moment before narrowing. "The housekeeper, Alex, surely you don't mean that." Olivia felt the blush creep up her neck. She stood up quickly. "Excuse me, I think I'd better go." "No," Alexander said, his voice cutting through the air like a blade. "Please stay, Olivia." He turned to Vanessa. "Ms. Pearson is not just an employee. She's a highly valued employee and perfectly capable of taking on this responsibility." Vanessa crossed her arms, her cold gaze fixed on Olivia. "And what do you make of that? Are you looking forward to planning your boss's wedding?" Olivia felt the weight of both their gazes on her. The tension in the air was palpable. At that moment, she realized that her answer could change the course of several lives, including her own. With a deep sigh, she lifted her chin and replied, "If Mr. Hawthorne trusts me with this task, I will do my best not to let him down." She paused, gathering her courage to continue. "And I will do my best to ensure that your wedding is perfect, Miss Sinclair." The silence that followed was deafening. Alexander smiled, a gleam of approval in his eyes. Vanessa, on the other hand, seemed to have swallowed something particularly bitter. "Well," Vanessa finally said, her voice cold as ice, "it looks like it's settled then. I hope you know what you're getting into, Ms. Pearson." With those words, she spun on her heels and left the library, leaving behind a trail of expensive perfume and unresolved tension. Alexander let out an audible sigh. "I apologize for that, Olivia. I'm sure Vanessa will get used to the idea." Olivia nodded, still stunned by what had just happened. "Mr. Hawthorne, are you sure this is a good idea? I don't want to cause any problems between you and your fiancé." Alexander moved closer, placing a hand gently on Olivia's shoulder. The touch, although brief, sent shivers down her spine. "I'm absolutely sure. I trust you, Olivia, more than you know." Their gazes met, and for a moment, Olivia had the impression of seeing something more in Alexander's eyes. Something beyond the trust of an employer in his employee. But as quickly as it appeared, the moment passed. "Well," Alexander said, stepping back, "I think we have a lot of work ahead of us. How about we start tomorrow? I'm sure you'll have plenty of ideas to make this event unforgettable." Olivia nodded, trying to ignore the swirl of emotions in her chest. "Yes, sir. I'll be ready." As she left the library, Olivia couldn't help thinking that she had just accepted the most difficult task of her life, planning the wedding of the man she secretly loved to another woman. What fate had in store for her in the coming days, she didn't know. But one thing was certain: nothing would ever be the same at the Hawthorne mansion. The next morning dawned with a soft mist enveloping the Hawthorne mansion, as if nature itself was trying to smooth over the edges of the previous day's events. Olivia woke before sunrise, her restless sleep populated by confused dreams of wedding dresses and enigmatic glances from Alexander. She dressed neatly, opting for a more formal outfit than her usual work uniform. After all, she was now the housekeeper in charge of the wedding, a position that demanded a more polished appearance. As she tied her hair into an elegant bun, Olivia couldn't help but question the wisdom of her decision. How could she maintain her composure while planning the wedding of the man she secretly loved? At 7 a.m. sharp, Olivia knocked on Alexander's office door. His voice, already alert despite the early hour, invited her in. "Good morning, Miss Pearson," Alexander said, looking up from the papers on his desk. For a moment, he seemed surprised by her more formal appearance, but soon a warm smile lit up his face. "I see you're ready to take on your new responsibilities." Olivia nodded, trying to ignore the warmth she felt under his gaze. "Yes, Mr. Hawthorne. I thought we'd start early. There's a lot to be done." "Excellent initiative," he replied, gesturing for her to sit down. "First of all, I want to hand you this." Alexander slid a folder across the table. Olivia opened the folder and her eyes widened. It was a contract detailing her new responsibilities and a financial compensation that was almost double her current salary. "Mr. Hawthorne, that's very generous," she stammered. Alexander shook his head. "It's the least I can offer for what I'm asking, Olivia. And please, for the next few weeks, I think you can call me Alexander. After all, we'll be working very closely together." Olivia's heart leapt. Calling him by his first name seemed to cross an invisible line that she had always carefully maintained. I'll try, sir. I mean, Alexander." He smiled, apparently satisfied. "Good. Now, about the preparations. Vanessa left a list of your requirements." Alexander pushed another folder towards Olivia, this time with a slight roll of his eyes. Olivia opened the folder and began to read. Her eyes grew wider with each item on the list. Flowers imported from Holland, a 7-tier wedding cake made by an award-winning New York chef, a famous band to play at the reception. The list seemed endless and increasingly extravagant. "That's quite ambitious," Olivia commented diplomatically. Alexander let out a low laugh. "That's a nice way of saying completely over the top, isn't it? I feel like Vanessa is trying to turn our wedding into a spectacle worthy of Hollywood." There was a note of weariness in his voice that Olivia had never heard before. For a moment, she wondered if Alexander was really happy about all the fuss. "Well," Olivia said, trying to sound optimistic, "I'm sure we can find a middle ground between Miss Sinclair's wishes and something more realistic." Alexander looked at her with a mixture of gratitude and something else, something Olivia couldn't define. "That's why I trust you with this, Olivia. You've always had the gift of making the impossible possible." The compliment took her by surprise, and Olivia felt the blush rise to her cheeks. "I'll do my best, Alexander." The next few days passed in a whirlwind of activity. Olivia plunged headlong into her new responsibilities, negotiating with suppliers, coordinating the mansion staff, and trying to balance Vanessa's extravagant desires with the practical limitations of the real world. It was during one of these negotiations that Olivia found herself face-to-face with Vanessa again. She was in the garden, discussing the layout of the marquee for the reception with the head of the events company, when Vanessa's cutting voice interrupted her. "What is it? I thought we'd agreed on a bigger tent," Vanessa said, her voice laced with disapproval. Olivia turned around, keeping her composure. "Ms. Sinclair, we were just discussing that. The larger tent wouldn't fit in the garden without damaging the centuries-old rose beds." Vanessa made a dismissive gesture. "So what? They're just flowers. This is the most important day of my life, and I want it to be perfect." Olivia felt a twinge of irritation, but kept her voice calm. "I understand your concern, Ms. Sinclair, but those roses are part of the Hawthorne family history. I'm sure Mr. Alexander, would like to preserve them." Vanessa's eyes narrowed as she heard Olivia use Alexander's first name. "Oh, and since when did you become an expert in what Alexander wants?" The tension in the air was palpable. The head of the events company looked from one to the other, clearly uncomfortable. "I'm not an expert," Olivia replied, remaining calm. "I've only known the house and its inhabitants for a while. But if you prefer, I can consult Alexander about it." "That won't be necessary," a male voice intervened. Alexander appeared, as if summoned by the mention of his name. "Olivia's right. Vanessa, the roses stay. I'm sure we can find a solution that suits everyone." Vanessa glared at Olivia before turning to Alexander, her expression softening instantly. "Of course, darling. I just want our day to be special." Alexander smiled, but the smile didn't reach his eyes. "It will be. I trust Olivia to make sure of that." As Vanessa pulled Alexander away, probably to discuss other wedding details, Olivia couldn't help but notice the tension in his shoulders. Something was wrong, something beyond the normal stress of planning a wedding. Later that evening, Olivia was in the kitchen going over the menus for the rehearsal dinner when she heard excited voices coming from the hallway. Recognizing the voices of Alexander and Vanessa, she hesitated, knowing she shouldn't listen, but unable to turn away. "I don't understand why you insist on giving her so much authority." Vanessa's voice sounded irritated. "Olivia knows this house better than anyone, Vanessa. She's doing an excellent job." Alexander's voice was firm, but tired. "She's a maid, Alex, and you treat her as if she were—" Vanessa paused, as if carefully choosing her next words. "As if she were more than that." There was a moment of tense silence before Alexander answered, his voice low and intense. "Maybe she is." The sound of footsteps moving quickly away was followed by the slamming of a door. Olivia was paralyzed, her heart beating furiously. What had Alexander meant by that? Before she could process what she had heard, the kitchen door opened and Alexander walked in. He looked surprised to see her there, but then his face softened. "Olivia," he said, his voice laden with an emotion she couldn't decipher. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to overhear," Olivia hastened to say. "I was just going over the menus and—" Alexander held up a hand, gently interrupting her. "It's all right. In fact, I'm glad I found you here. There's something I need to tell you." He moved closer, and Olivia felt her heart speed up. Alexander's closeness, the intense look in his eyes, everything seemed charged with a meaning she hardly dared to consider. "Olivia, Alexander began, but was interrupted by the shrill sound of the kitchen phone. The moment was broken. Olivia answered the phone automatically, discovering that it was the florist with an urgent question about the arrangements. When she hung up, Alexander had already left the kitchen. Olivia stood there, alone, her heart and mind in turmoil. What did Alexander want to tell her? And what did that conversation she had accidentally overheard mean? As the Hawthorne mansion sank into the silence of the night, Olivia knew that something had changed irrevocably. The wedding preparations were continuing, but now there was an undercurrent of tension and unspoken possibilities that threatened to transform everything. With a deep sigh, Olivia turned her attention to the menus in front of her. The wedding was fast approaching, and there was a lot of work to be done. But for the first time since accepting this task, she allowed herself a small glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, the end of this story wasn't yet written. The sun had barely risen when Olivia was already on her feet, her mind still reeling from the events of the night before. Alexander's words echoed in her mind. Maybe she is. What did he mean? And what would have happened if the phone hadn't rung? Shaking her head to clear it, Olivia concentrated on the day's tasks. With only 2 weeks until the wedding, every minute was precious. She went downstairs to the kitchen, determined to get an early start. To her surprise, Alexander was already there, a cup of coffee in his hands and dark circles under his eyes. He looked up as she entered, a tired smile forming on his lips. "Good morning, Olivia," he said, his voice hoarse with sleep. "You're up early today." "Good morning, Alex." "Ander," she replied, still uncomfortable with the intimacy of using his first name. "You too." An awkward silence hung between them, laden with unspoken words and interrupted moments. Olivia busied herself preparing her own cup of coffee, trying to ignore the tension in the air. Olivia, Alexander finally broke the silence. About last night. Her heart leapt. Yes? But before he could continue, the kitchen door opened again and Vanessa walked in, impeccably dressed despite the early hour. Oh, what a pleasant surprise, Vanessa exclaimed, although her tone suggested otherwise. A little morning meeting in the kitchen? How quaint. Alexander stood up abruptly. Vanessa, I didn't expect you so soon. Clearly, she replied, her cold gaze passing from Alexander to Olivia. I thought I'd drop by to discuss some wedding details, but I see you're already busy with domestic matters. Olivia felt the blush rise to her cheeks. I was just starting my working day, Ms. Sinclair. There's a lot to be done. Oh, I'm sure there is, Vanessa replied, her smile not reaching her eyes. Actually, since we're all here, how about we discuss the changes I want to make to the guest list? Alexander frowned. Changes? I thought we'd already finalized the list. Vanessa made a nonchalant gesture with her hand. Just a few minor adjustments, dear. I thought we could add a few more important names. After all, this is the social event of the year at Cedar Grove. Olivia watched Alexander's expression close up. It was clear that he didn't like the idea. Vanessa, he said, his voice tense, we've already talked about this. We wanted to keep the ceremony intimate, with only close friends and family. But, Alex, Vanessa insisted, her sweet tone contrasting with the determined glint in her eyes. Think of the connections we can make. The governor has confirmed that he can come if we invite him, and there's that New York investor you were trying to impress. Alexander ran a hand through his hair, a gesture Olivia recognized as a sign of frustration. This is our wedding, not a networking opportunity. The tension in the air was palpable. Olivia felt uncomfortable, as if she were witnessing something she shouldn't be. She started to walk away discreetly, but Vanessa's voice stopped her. What about you, Miss Pearson? What do you think? Olivia froze, taken aback. Well, it's not up to me to give an opinion on the guest list, Ms. Sinclair. Nonsense, Vanessa insisted, a fake smile on her lips. You're the wedding governess, aren't you? Surely you have an opinion on the matter. Olivia looked from Vanessa to Alexander, feeling trapped. Alexander's gaze was intense, as if challenging her to be honest. Taking a deep breath, Olivia decided to risk it. If I may be frank, I believe that marriage should reflect the wishes of the couple. If if Alexander prefers a more intimate ceremony, perhaps we should respect that. The silence that followed was deafening. Vanessa stared at her with a mixture of surprise and barely contained fury. Alexander, on the other hand, had an expression that Olivia couldn't decipher. Surprise, gratitude, and something else. Something that made her heart race. Well, Vanessa finally said, her voice sharp as ice, I see you have quite a bit of influence here, Mrs. Pearson. Perhaps more than you should. Vanessa, Alexander interjected, his voice firm. Olivia is just doing her job, and she's right. This is our wedding, not a corporate event. The tension between the couple was palpable. Olivia felt she should leave, give them some privacy, but her feet seemed stuck to the floor. Vanessa cast one last furious glance at Olivia before turning to Alexander. Well, if that's how you feel, maybe we should rethink a few things. I'll be in the guest suite when you decide to be reasonable. With that, she spun on her heels and left the kitchen, leaving a heavy silence behind. Alexander let out a tired sigh, sinking into the nearest chair. I'm sorry you had to witness that, Olivia. She approached hesitantly, placing a hand gently on his shoulder. It's all right, Alexander. Weddings can be stressful. He looked up, his eyes meeting hers. For a moment, it seemed as if the world had stopped. It's more than that, Olivia. I'm not sure I'm doing the right thing. Olivia's heart leapt. What do you mean? Alexander stood up abruptly, coming within inches of her. I mean that ever since you took over the wedding preparations, I've been thinking. I've been feeling. He paused, seeming to struggle with the words. Olivia barely breathed, fearful of breaking the moment. Olivia, Alexander continued, his voice low and intense, I think I've made a mistake. A huge mistake." Before Olivia could process what was happening, Alexander leaned in and kissed her. It was a soft kiss, almost hesitant, but charged with emotion. Olivia felt as if the ground had disappeared beneath her feet. When they broke apart, they were both panting. Olivia stared at him, a mixture of shock and ecstasy on her face. "Alexander, But he gently interrupted her. "Don't say anything now, please. I know this complicates everything, but I couldn't deny what I'm feeling any longer. I need time to think, to decide what to do." With one last intense look, Alexander quickly left the kitchen, leaving Olivia dazed and confused. She leaned on the worktop, her legs trembling. What had just happened? And what did this mean for her marriage, for her job, for everything? The next few hours passed in a blur. Olivia tried to concentrate on her tasks, but her mind kept returning to that kiss, to Alexander's words. She knew she had crossed a line, that nothing would ever be the same. In the afternoon, while supervising the delivery of flowers for the centerpieces, Olivia was surprised by Vanessa. "Ms. Pearson," Vanessa called out, her voice cold as ice. "Can we talk in private?" Olivia nodded, following Vanessa to a secluded corner of the garden. Her heart was pounding furiously, dreading what was to come. Vanessa turned to face her, her eyes blazing with barely contained fury. "I don't know what you think you're doing, but it ends now." "Ms. Sinclair, don't play dumb," Vanessa interrupted her. "I see how you look at Alexander, how he looks at you. But let me make one thing clear. He's my fiancé. This wedding is going to happen, and you're not going to stand in the way." Olivia felt a wave of indignation rise in her chest. "With all due respect, Ms. Sinclair, I'm not the one standing in the way of anything. If there are problems between you and Alexander, perhaps you should discuss them with him." Vanessa's eyes narrowed dangerously. "Careful, Ms. Pearson. You're playing with fire. Remember who you are and where you belong." With those words, Vanessa walked away, leaving Olivia shaking with anger and frustration. She knew that the situation had escalated beyond her control. The wedding was less than 2 weeks away, and everything seemed to be falling apart. That night, alone in her room, Olivia contemplated her options. She could pretend that nothing had happened, continue with the preparations and ignore her feelings. Or she could face the truth, risk everything for what could only be a moment of weakness on Alexander's part. As the clock ticked, Olivia knew that a decision had to be made. The future of everyone at Hawthorne Manor depended on it. Dawn brought with it a dense fog that enveloped Hawthorne Manor, as if nature itself was trying to hide the secrets and tensions that simmered within its walls. Olivia woke up with a heavy head, the emotions of the previous day still vivid in her mind. She dressed mechanically, her reflection in the mirror revealing deep circles under her eyes and a worried expression. With only 10 days until the wedding, Olivia knew she couldn't afford to be distracted. However, Alexander's kiss and Vanessa's veiled threats echoed in her mind, making it impossible to concentrate fully on her tasks. Going down to the kitchen, Olivia was greeted by an unusual silence. Normally, at this hour, the team would already be in full swing, preparing breakfast and discussing the day's tasks. Instead, she found only Margaret, the head cook, absent-mindedly stirring a pot on the stove. "Good morning, Margaret," Olivia greeted, trying to sound more cheerful than she felt. "Is everything all right? Where is everyone?" Margaret turned around, a worried expression on her wrinkled face. "Ah, Miss Olivia. I'm not sure what's going on, but there's something in the air. Mr. Hawthorne canceled breakfast and asked not to be disturbed. Miss Sinclair left early, looking, well, furious would be a kind word." Olivia felt a knot forming in her stomach. The repercussions of the previous day's events were beginning to show, and she feared what might come next. "I see," she replied, trying to keep her composure. "Well, let's get on with our normal tasks. I'm sure everything will work out." But as she said those words, Olivia wasn't so sure. She had spent the morning going over guest lists, confirming flower orders, and dealing with the myriad of small details that made up the big event. However, her mind kept going back to Alexander. Where was he? What was he thinking? Around midday, while Olivia was in the office organizing the contracts for the suppliers, the door opened abruptly. Alexander walked in, looking like he had aged years overnight. His eyes met Olivia's, and for a moment, the world seemed to stop. "Olivia," he said, his voice hoarse, "we need to talk." She nodded, her heart racing. "Of course, Alexander. What happened?" He closed the door behind him and came closer, sitting down heavily in the chair opposite her desk. I don't know where to start. Yesterday, what happened between us?" Olivia felt the blush rise to her cheeks. "Alexander, I understand if you want to pretend it never happened. I know it was a moment of weakness and—" "No," he interrupted her, his eyes intense. "It wasn't weakness, Olivia. It was clarity. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was being true to myself." Olivia's heart leapt. "What do you mean?" Alexander stood up, pacing restlessly around the office. "I mean that this wedding, all this extravagance, it's not me. It never was. Vanessa and I, we met at a time when I was vulnerable, after the death of my father. She represented stability, connections, everything I felt I needed to maintain the Hawthorne family legacy." He stopped, turning to face her. "But since you took over the wedding preparations, I've seen everything with new eyes. Your dedication, your integrity, the way you genuinely care about this house and the people in it, it's made me realize what really matters." Olivia barely breathed, afraid of breaking the moment. "And what does matter, Alexander?" He moved closer, taking her hands in his. "You, Olivia, you matter. What I feel for you is real, true. It's something I've never felt for Vanessa." The words hung in the air between them, charged with promise and danger. Olivia felt tears forming in her eyes. "Alexander, I feel something for you too. For a long time. But this wedding, your fiancé, it's too complicated." He nodded, a sad smile on his lips. "I know, and that's why I need to make a decision. I can't go on with this marriage knowing what I know now, feeling what I feel. It wouldn't be fair to anyone, especially Vanessa." At that moment, as if summoned by her words, the office door opened violently. Vanessa walked in, her eyes sparking with fury at the sight of Alexander and Olivia holding hands. "So that's it," she hissed, her voice shaking with anger. "All this time, while I was planning our future, you were falling in love with the maid." Alexander let go of Olivia's hands, turning to face Vanessa. "Vanessa, I'm sorry. I never wanted things to come to this, but I can't keep pretending." "Pretending?" Vanessa interrupted him, her voice rising in volume. "The only pretending here is this farce." She pointed accusingly at Olivia. "She's manipulated you, Alex. Don't you see? She saw an opportunity and she seized it." Olivia felt a wave of indignation surge through her chest. "That's not true, Ms. Sinclair. I would never—" "Shut up," Vanessa shouted, advancing menacingly. "You've ruined everything. Years of planning, all the connections we were going to make, all down the drain because of a stupid crush." Alexander placed himself between the two women, his voice firm. "Enough, Vanessa. This has nothing to do with Olivia. The truth is that we both know that this marriage is a mistake. We're together for the wrong reasons." Vanessa recoiled as if she'd been slapped. "Wrong reasons? And what would those reasons be, Alex? Love? Passion? Don't be naive. Marriages like ours are about alliances, about building a solid future." "Maybe for you," Alexander replied, his voice softening. "But I've realized that I want more than that. I want a partnership based on mutual respect, on shared values. I want—" He hesitated, casting a glance at Olivia. "True love." The silence that followed was deafening. Vanessa looked from Alexander to Olivia, understanding finally settling in her eyes. "You really love her," she said. Not a question, but a bitter realization. Alexander nodded slowly. "I'm sorry, Vanessa. I never meant to hurt you." Vanessa let out a humorless laugh. Hurt? Oh, Alex, you have no idea what you've just done. She turned to Olivia, her eyes cold as ice. And you, enjoy it while you can, because when I'm finished, you'll have nothing. With those words, Vanessa left the office, slamming the door so hard that the paintings on the walls shook. Olivia and Alexander were silent for a long moment, the weight of what had just happened hanging over them. What do we do now? Olivia finally asked, her voice little more than a whisper. Alexander moved closer, taking her in his arms. Now, we face whatever comes, together. As she snuggled into Alexander's embrace, Olivia knew that the storm was far from over. There was a wedding to cancel, guests to inform, a mansion full of confused staff and, no doubt, repercussions from Vanessa's threats to deal with. But in that moment, wrapped in the warmth and security of Alexander's arms, Olivia allowed herself a glimmer of hope. Whatever the future held, they would face it together. As the afternoon progressed, the news of the wedding's cancellation spread through the mansion like fire through dry straw. Olivia and Alexander spent hours making calls, sending emails and dealing with the logistics of dismantling such a large event in such a short space of time. The mansion staff, although shocked by the events, rallied around Alexander and Olivia. Margaret, the head cook, was the first to express her support. I always knew you two had something special, she said, giving Olivia a tight hug. It's nice to see true love triumph. As the sun set, dyeing the sky shades of orange and pink, Olivia and Alexander finally had a moment to breathe. They were in the garden, sitting on a stone bench surrounded by roses in full bloom. Do you regret it? Olivia asked softly, her fingers entwined with Alexander's. He looked at her, a soft smile on his lips. Not for a second. I know the road ahead won't be easy, but for the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm on the right track. Olivia nodded, leaning her head on his shoulder. We still have a lot to sort out. Vanessa's threat. We'll deal with that when the time comes, Alexander interrupted her gently. For now, I just want to enjoy this moment with you. As dusk enveloped the Hawthorne mansion, Olivia and Alexander stood there, embraced, facing an uncertain future, but one full of possibilities. The journey ahead of them would be challenging, but with love as their compass, they were ready to face any storm that came their way. The morning after the tumultuous wedding cancellation dawned with surprising clarity, as if the emotional storm of the previous day had washed away the world, leaving it new and bright. Olivia woke up in her room at the Hawthorne mansion, for a moment disoriented by the stillness that enveloped her. The events of the previous day came flooding back. Alexander's confession, the confrontation with Vanessa, the cancellation of the wedding. It all seemed like a distant dream, but reality soon set in when she heard a soft knock on her door. Olivia? Alexander's voice sounded from the other side, low and hesitant. Are you awake? She stood up quickly, smoothing her robe over her pajamas before opening the door. Alexander stood there, looking simultaneously exhausted and refreshed. His eyes lit up when he saw her. Good morning, he said, a soft smile on his lips. I hope I didn't wake you. Olivia shook her head, returning the smile. No, I was already awake. Is everything all right? Alexander hesitated for a moment. Actually, there's something we need to discuss. Can we have coffee together? There's news. The tone in his voice made Olivia instantly worry. Sure, just give me a few minutes to get dressed. 15 minutes later, Olivia found Alexander on the back porch of the mansion. A table was set with a simple but elegant breakfast. The view of the manicured gardens provided a sense of calm that contrasted with the tension evident in Alexander's shoulders. What's wrong? Olivia asked, taking a seat facing him. Alexander sighed, running a hand through his hair in a gesture she recognized as a sign of concern. I got a call from my lawyer this morning. Vanessa, well, she's carrying out her threat. Olivia felt a knot forming in her stomach. What did she do? She's suing Hawthorne Manor for breach of contract, Alexander explained, his voice tense. She claims that canceling the wedding caused damage to her reputation and financial loss. And that's not all. He paused, seeming reluctant to continue. Is there more? Olivia asked, dreading the answer. Alexander nodded gravely. She's also threatening to go to the press with a story about us, claiming that you seduced me to sabotage the wedding? Olivia felt as if she'd been punched in the stomach. She can't do that. It's completely false. I know, Alexander said, reaching out to take her hand on the table. My lawyer says we have a strong case against her allegations, but... He hesitated again. But what? Olivia pressed. But the damage to the reputation of Hawthorne Manor and the family business could be irreparable if this goes public, he concluded, the frustration evident in his voice. Olivia felt tears forming in her eyes. Alexander, I'm sorry. I never meant to cause trouble for you or your family. He squeezed her hand tighter. No, Olivia. None of this is your fault. It was me who made the decision to cancel the wedding. It was me who realized that my feelings for you were stronger and truer than anything I've ever felt for Vanessa. They were silent for a moment, the weight of the situation hanging over them. Finally, Olivia spoke, her voice low but determined. What can we do? Alexander smiled sadly. My lawyer suggested a meeting with Vanessa and her representatives. He thinks we can reach an agreement out of court. But, Olivia encouraged, but he also thinks it would be best if you stayed away from the mansion for a while, Alexander concluded, the pain evident in his voice, to avoid any more gossip and to give things time to settle down. Olivia felt as if the ground had disappeared beneath her feet. Do you want me to leave? No, Alexander exclaimed, getting up and walking over to her. He knelt down beside her, taking both her hands in his. Olivia, the last thing I want is to be away from you, but I need to protect you, protect both of us, from Vanessa's manipulations. Olivia nodded slowly, understanding the logic behind the suggestion, even if her heart rebelled against it. Where would I go? I thought of that, Alexander said, a small smile appearing on his lips. Remember that little cottage the family has in the mountains? I thought it might be a good refuge for a few weeks, until we sort this situation out. The idea of being alone in a country house, far from Alexander and everything she knew, was frightening. But Olivia knew it was the sensible decision to make. When should I leave? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. This afternoon, if possible, Alexander replied, the reluctance evident in his tone. The sooner we sort this out, the sooner we can be together again, with nothing and no one between us. Olivia nodded, trying to swallow the knot in her throat. All right, I'll pack my things. The next few hours passed in a blur of activity. Olivia packed the essentials, said goodbye to the staff at the mansion, many of whom expressed their support and desire for her to return soon, and, before she knew it, she was in the car with Alexander, heading for the mountains. The 2-hour journey was made in comfortable silence, their hands intertwined on the center console of the car. The landscape gradually changed, the busy city streets giving way to winding roads between tall, majestic pine trees. When they finally reached the country house, Olivia was amazed. It was a rustic but elegant building, with a wide veranda and large windows that promised a spectacular view of the mountains. Alexander helped her carry her bags inside, and together they explored the house. It was cozy and well-equipped, with a stone fireplace in the living room and a modern kitchen that contrasted pleasantly with the rustic style of the rest of the house. When it was time for Alexander to leave, Olivia felt her heart squeeze. They were on the balcony, the sun beginning to set behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. I'll sort this out as soon as possible, Alexander promised, holding her face between his hands. And I'll come and visit you whenever I can. Olivia nodded, fighting back tears. I know. I'll be fine, don't worry. Alexander pulled her into a deep, passionate kiss, as if he wanted to memorize the feel of his lips against hers. When they broke apart, they were both panting. I love you, Olivia, Alexander said, his words charged with emotion. "Never doubt that. I love you too," she replied, allowing herself a small smile. "Now go, sort out this mess so we can start our life together for real." With one last kiss, Alexander got into the car and drove off, leaving Olivia alone on the porch of the cottage. She watched the car disappear down the winding road, a mixture of emotions swirling in her chest. As she entered the house, Olivia couldn't help but feel a twinge of uncertainty. The future was hazy, full of unknown challenges. But at the same time, there was a flame of hope burning in her heart. No matter what Vanessa or anyone else tried, she and Alexander had found something rare and precious, and she was determined to fight for it, no matter what. Sitting in the living room, watching the fire she had lit in the fireplace, Olivia allowed herself a moment of reflection. Her life had changed dramatically in such a short space of time. From maid to runaway bride, from a life of service to a promise of true love. It was frightening and exciting at the same time. With a deep sigh, she grabbed a book from the nearby shelf and settled down on the sofa. The next few days would be long and lonely, but she would face them with the strength and determination that had always characterized her. And on the horizon shone the promise of a future with Alexander, a future worth waiting for and fighting for. As the shadows of night fell over the mountains, Olivia allowed herself a small smile. This was not the conclusion she had expected when she started planning a wedding a few weeks ago. It was the start of something much bigger, much more significant, and she couldn't wait to see what fate had in store for her and Alexander. The days at the mountain cottage unfolded at a slow and steady pace, so different from the frenetic hustle and bustle Olivia had experienced over the last few weeks at Hawthorne Manor. Mornings were filled with birdsong and the aroma of fresh coffee, afternoons with long walks through the surrounding forest, and evenings with the cozy crackle of the fire in the fireplace. Despite the serene beauty of her surroundings, Olivia couldn't help the feeling of restlessness that consumed her. Every ring of the phone made her heart leap, waiting for news of Alexander. Each email was opened with a mixture of hope and apprehension. One particularly sunny afternoon, about a week after her arrival at the villa, Olivia was sitting on the veranda, a forgotten book on her lap, when her phone rang. Alexander's name flashed up on the screen, and she answered with a mixture of relief and trepidation. "Alexander, has something happened?" His voice sounded tired but determined. "Hello, my love. Yes and no. We had our first meeting with Vanessa's lawyers today." Olivia felt her stomach contract. And how was that? Alexander let out a heavy sigh. "Difficult. Vanessa is unyielding. She's demanding substantial financial compensation and, well, she's brought up some things from the past that I'd rather have left buried." "What kind of things?" Olivia asked, hesitantly. There was a pause on the other end of the line before Alexander answered. "Remember when I told you about how Vanessa and I met after my father died? Well, there's more to that story than I initially told you." Olivia felt a chill run down her spine. "Alexander, what are you telling me?" "Vanessa, she helped me get through a very difficult period, he began, his voice trembling. "After my father died, I didn't cope well with the pressure of taking over the family business. I started drinking too much, making reckless decisions. Vanessa was the one who helped me get back on my feet." Olivia remained silent, absorbing the information. Alexander continued. "She's threatening to expose that period of my life if we don't agree to her demands. She says she has evidence, photos, emails, things that could seriously damage the Hawthorne family's reputation." "Oh, Alexander?" Olivia whispered, feeling her heart squeeze at the pain evident in his voice. "I'm sorry you had to go through that. But why didn't you tell me before?" "I wanted to, Olivia." "Believe me," Alexander replied, his voice laden with remorse. "But it's a part of my past that I'm not proud of. And honestly, I was hoping that Vanessa would have more class than to use it against me." Olivia took a deep breath, trying to process everything she was hearing. "What can we do?" "My lawyers are working on a counter-proposal," Alexander explained. "We're trying to reach an agreement that will satisfy Vanessa without compromising the family's assets too much. But it's going to be a long and complicated process." Silence hung between them for a moment. heavy with unspoken implications. Finally, Olivia spoke. "Alexander, I love you. It doesn't matter what happened in the past. We're in this together, okay?" She could hear the smile in his voice as he replied, "I love you too, Olivia, more than I can express, and I'm sorry for all of this. You deserve so much more than this drama." They talked for a few more minutes, exchanging words of comfort and love before saying goodbye. When the call ended, Olivia found herself staring at the mountainous landscape, her mind a whirlwind of thoughts. The next few days passed in a blur of worry and reflection. Olivia found herself going over every moment she had shared with Alexander, every conversation, every glance. Were there signs she hadn't noticed? Details she had overlooked? One particularly melancholy afternoon, while rummaging through the shelves of the cottage's small library, Olivia found an old photo album. Curious, she opened it and found herself looking at familiar, albeit younger, faces. There was Alexander, probably in his early 20s, smiling next to an older man who shared his features, his father, Olivia assumed. As she flipped through the pages, she saw Alexander's gradual transformation, the carefree smile giving way to a more serious expression, his eyes losing some of their sparkle. And then, in one of the last photos, she saw Vanessa for the first time. The photo showed Alexander and Vanessa at a social event, both smiling at the camera. But what caught Olivia's eye was Vanessa's hand on Alexander's arm. It wasn't a gesture of affection, but almost possessive. As she looked at the photo, a realization began to form in Olivia's mind. Vanessa wasn't just a spiteful fiancée or a calculating businesswoman. She was someone who had invested years of her life in Alexander, someone who had seen him at his most vulnerable. With a heavy sigh, Olivia closed the album. She was beginning to understand the complexity of the situation they were in. It wasn't a simple question of love versus money or reputation. It was an intricate web of history, gratitude, and perhaps even manipulation. That evening, sitting in front of the fireplace with a cup of tea, Olivia made a decision. She couldn't passively wait for Alexander to sort everything out. If they were really in this together, she had to do her part. With renewed determination, Olivia turned on her laptop and started researching. She spent hours reading about prenuptial agreements, defamation laws, and negotiation strategies. If Vanessa wanted to play hardball, Olivia would be prepared. As the night progressed, a plan began to form in her mind. It was risky, potentially dangerous, but it could be the key to resolving this whole situation. Olivia knew Alexander probably wouldn't approve, but she was determined to protect the man she loved and the future they dreamed of together. When the sun rose the next morning, Olivia was already on her feet, her suitcase packed next to the door. She took one last look at the serene mountain landscape before picking up her phone and dialing a number. "Hello, Margaret," she said when the cook answered. "It's Olivia. I need a favor." As she drove back to Cedar Grove, Olivia felt a mixture of fear and determination. She didn't know exactly how things would turn out, but she was sure of one thing. It was time to take charge of her destiny. The winding road down from the mountains seemed like a metaphor for the journey she was about to embark on, full of unexpected turns and potential dangers, but also offering glimpses of a bright future on the horizon. As the first houses of Cedar Grove began to appear, Olivia took a deep breath, preparing herself for what was to come. She had a plan, she had determination, and above all, she had love. It was time to face Vanessa at her own game and fight for the future she and Alexander deserved. With the first rays of sunlight illuminating the city in front of her, Olivia smiled. Whatever the outcome, she knew she wouldn't regret it. Because sometimes, love requires us to take risks, to be brave, and Olivia was ready to be just that. The morning sun had barely begun to gild the streets of Cedar Grove when Olivia parked her car in front of an elegant cafe in the center of town. Her heart was pounding in her chest, a mixture of nervousness and determination coursing through her veins. She checked her watch. There were only 10 minutes to go. Taking a deep breath to calm herself, Olivia entered the cafe. The aroma of freshly ground coffee and freshly baked croissants would normally have calmed her down, but today even that couldn't ease her anxiety. Her eyes scanned the room until they found what she was looking for, Vanessa Sinclair, sitting alone at a table at the back, a wary expression on her perfectly made-up face. Olivia approached, keeping her posture straight and her chin up. "Ms. Sinclair, thank you for agreeing to meet me." Vanessa raised a perfectly drawn eyebrow. "I confess I was curious about your request, Ms. Pearson, or should I call you the future Mrs. Hawthorne?" Ignoring the provocation, Olivia sat down. "I'm here to talk about the deal you're negotiating with Alexander." "Oh," Vanessa leaned forward, a dangerous glint in her eyes. "And what could you possibly have to say about it?" Olivia took another deep breath before answering. "I want to propose an alternative, one that benefits us all." Vanessa laughed, the sound cold and humorless. "And what alternative would that be?" "Before I go into the details," Olivia began, her voice firm, "I want you to understand one thing. I love Alexander, not for his name, not for his money, but for the man he is, and I will do anything to protect him." Vanessa's expression hardened. "Love? You have no idea what it's like to love Alexander Hawthorne. I built him. I saved him when he was destroying himself. Where were you then, Miss Pearson?" "I know what you did for him, Vanessa," Olivia replied calmly. "And believe me, I'm grateful for that. But what are you doing now? This isn't love. It's revenge." The two women stared at each other for a long moment, the tension palpable between them. Finally, Vanessa spoke, her voice low and dangerous. "What do you want, Olivia?" Olivia opened her bag and took out a folder. "I did some research about you, about your history with Alexander, about the Hawthorne family business." She paused, watching Vanessa's reaction. "And I found some interesting things." Vanessa paled slightly, but kept her composure. "Are you threatening me?" "No," Olivia replied quickly. "I'm offering you a trade. You drop your threats and lawsuits against Alexander, and in return, I offer you this." She slid an envelope across the table. Vanessa picked it up with trembling fingers, opening it cautiously. Her eyes widened when she saw the contents. "This is a contract," Olivia added, "offering you a consultancy position in the Hawthorne family business. Based on your experience and knowledge of the sector, I believe you would be a valuable asset, and it would give you the opportunity to build your own reputation, independent of Alexander." Vanessa looked from Olivia to the contract, clearly in shock. "Why would you do that, after all?" "Because, as I said, I love Alexander," Olivia replied softly. "And part of loving him is recognizing the role you've played in his life. You helped him at a crucial time. Now it's time for all of us to move on." The silence that followed seemed to stretch on for an eternity. Vanessa studied the contract, her expression a mixture of conflicting emotions. Finally, she looked up at Olivia. "You're different from what I expected, Ms. Pearson," Vanessa said, a touch of respect in her voice. Olivia smiled slightly. "I believe we're all more complex than we seem at first glance." Just then, the door to the cafe opened, and Alexander walked in, his face a mask of worry and confusion. He spotted Olivia and Vanessa and quickly approached. "Olivia, Vanessa, what's going on here?" he asked, looking from one to the other. Olivia stood up, taking Alexander's hands in hers. "Love, I know you're going to be mad at me for doing this behind your back, but I needed to try and sort things out." Alexander frowned, but before he could reply, Vanessa spoke up. "Your fiancée is a remarkable woman, Alexander," she said, her voice surprisingly soft. "She made me a proposal that, well, that made me rethink a lot of things." Alexander looked at Olivia, a mixture of love and admiration in his eyes. "You never cease to amaze me, my love." Over the next few hours, the three of them engaged in a long and sometimes difficult conversation. Truths were spoken, tears were shed, and slowly, a mutual understanding began to form. By the end of the day, as the sun began to set over Cedar Grove, a new agreement had been reached. Vanessa accepted Olivia's proposal, abandoning her threats in exchange for the opportunity to build something new. Alexander, although initially reluctant, recognized the wisdom in Olivia's solution. As they left the cafe, Alexander pulled Olivia into a tight hug. "You're amazing. You know that? You risked everything to solve this." Olivia smiled, nestling into his arms. "I'd do anything for you, for us. Besides," she added with a mischievous smile, "I think I've proved that I'm more than capable of dealing with the dramas of high society." Alexander laughed, a sound full of joy and relief. "You've certainly proved that. So, Miss Pearson, what do you say we start planning our own wedding? A much simpler and more sincere one this time." Olivia's heart filled with happiness. "Nothing could make me happier, Mr. Hawthorne." As they walked hand in hand through the streets of Cedar Grove, the future opened up before them, full of promise and possibility. Olivia reflected on the journey that had brought them there, from maid and employer to equal partners, from an arranged marriage to a true and deep love. In the months that followed, life at Hawthorne Manor underwent major changes. Olivia and Alexander were married in an intimate ceremony in the estate's gardens, surrounded only by their closest friends and family. Margaret, the head cook, wept with happiness as she watched Olivia walk down the makeshift aisle among the roses. Vanessa, true to her word, took on an advisory role in the Hawthorne family business. Her experience and insight proved invaluable, and slowly, a relationship of mutual respect began to form between her and the couple. As for Olivia and Alexander, they faced the challenges of their new relationship and responsibilities with the same determination and love that brought them together. There were difficult moments, of course, adjustments to be made, expectations to be realigned, but through it all, their love only grew stronger. One afternoon, about a year after their wedding, Olivia was in the mansion's library, organizing some books, when Alexander walked in. He hugged her from behind, planting a soft kiss on her neck. "You know," he murmured against her skin, "sometimes I still catch myself thinking about how all this started, with you planning my wedding to another woman." Olivia laughed, turning in his arms to face him. "Life certainly has an interesting sense of humor, doesn't it?" Alexander smiled, his eyes shining with love. "I wouldn't change a thing. Every moment has brought us here, to you." "Not even the hard times," Olivia teased gently. "Especially the hard times," Alexander replied seriously. "They've shown us what we're capable of together." Olivia leaned in for a kiss, her heart overflowing with happiness. When they broke apart, she whispered, "I love you, Alexander Hawthorne, today and always." "And I love you, Olivia Hawthorne," he replied, his voice full of emotion. "My partner, my best friend, my true love." As the sun set over the Hawthorne mansion, casting a golden glow through the library windows, Olivia and Alexander remained embraced, grateful for the tortuous path that had led them to each other, and looking forward to the future they would build together. Because in the end, they discovered that true love isn't just about grand gestures or dramatic moments. It's about choosing each other every day, facing challenges together, and building a life of mutual understanding, respect, and affection. And on that quiet afternoon at Hawthorne Manor, Olivia and Alexander knew they had found just that, a love that surpassed all expectations, all obstacles, and that would continue to grow and flourish in the years to come.
Did this narrative stir your emotions? Don't forget to express your approval with a like. Take advantage of the Super Thanks feature, available just below the video, to offer direct support to the channel and contribute to the production of more fascinating content. Subscribe and remember to activate the bell to stay up to date with all the latest updates. And attention, a new exciting story is already ready to be displayed on your screen. Your participation means a lot to me, and I hope to count on your presence soon. Thank you very much for dedicating your time to this video.